to present Jaguar Adva, and please tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience.
Hi y'all, I'm Jaguar Adva. I'm a lawyer and a CPA, but I swear to God I'm a nice person. For about 21 years, I service startups and large corporations such as Intel Capital, going with startups in the high-tech industry, more specifically in the fintech industry, and even more specifically in the last 3.5 years, companies in the areas of blockchain, and then it became other currencies, starting with Bitcoin and Ethereum, and then other ones. So what I'd like to talk to you about, if I may, is the dualism or duality and the relationships between the old money world, which is the banks, the regulators, the government, and the young world, I would call it, which is the technology world. And if you have more questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Actually, yeah, I actually want to go through the practical steps now, and then whatever else you want to tell to the world, and
message.
Yeah, your core message to the world. Okay, so I'd love for you to walk us through the process, and let's start with a company. Let's say I am a company and I want to start accepting cryptocurrency as payment. What do I need to do?
First rule, and my friend here from Bits of Gold will agree with me, I'm sure about that, is as long as you can, try not to open your bank account in Israel. So far. I'm fighting to change that. I sue the banks for my clients, and I'm working to change that. But so far, until I win, open your bank account, if you can, at Switzerland, Gibraltar, wherever, just not yet in Israel. That's a first rule. Second, as long as you can do that legally without lying, because we never lie, try not to put, as you can, in the description of your company, and specifically not in the name of the company, as long as you can give up the marketing part of it, don't put Bitcoin and blockchain in it. Not Ethereum, not virtual, not the word digital, not the word virtual, and not crypto.
Liberation.
Sorry?
Only liberation.
Nothing too libertarian in that sense, because a lot of companies who've just sold equity, the oldest thing in the world, almost the oldest thing in the world, just shares, equity, and try to receive VC funds, which is plain old fiat money like dollars. Many of them are being blocked just because they happen to develop something in the blockchain industry. The banks are terrified. So the first wise rule that I would, or advice that I would give anyone who's opening any company in that area is don't tell that as long as you can. As long as you can do that without lying, of course. If you can merge that with any other activity or call it in any other names, so far, keep it more quiet. This is a very anarchistic rule to say.
Before you go to rule number 2, that's exactly what I did to advertise this event on Facebook, and it still didn't work. You know, I call it the new alternative financial systems, or because on Facebook you get blocked as well if you do crypto blockchain, for sure.
Wow.
So same rule online and offline.
Yeah, I used to I've taken a lecture that I tried to publish on Facebook about a few months ago about the new economy, the new world, and I happened to put the word blockchain. What is it? And I've listed and I've written absolutely no trading. I do not trade. I do not consult about trading. I do not encourage people to trade, and it didn't matter. Facebook just blocked the ad. So I've heard that they've stopped doing that recently, but apparently haven't yet.
Okay, so that's step number 2.
They are going blockchain with WhatsApp.
Yeah, I've heard that.
So they can't block this thing.
Yeah. Don't worry, they'll find a way. So the first step number 1 is to open a bank account to do the crypto side of the business elsewhere for the time being. and describe yourself as a, whatever else if you can. Okay, great. So great. I've set up a bank account. So now I'm accepting payments. But still, if I want, what do I do if I want to actually get Bitcoin into my account? Do I need to use an exchange? How does that work?
Well, I'll give two different advices on this. First of all, it's not the legal advice, but the business advice is that if you receive any currency which is not fiat and therefore not as stable, do work with any kind of an exchange or stock exchange, crypto exchange, to hedge that. Hedge meaning protect the rates of that currency, because if you pay your employees or your rent or your offices or anything with fiat and you get your revenues with whatever is crypto, you need to hedge that gap. So that's the first thing. It's a business advice, not a legal one. Second, for your question, if you receive cryptocurrency and you need to pay your employees, your suppliers, or whoever with anything other than that, you need to exchange that. For that, there are many exchanges. Two of them at least are in Israel, most of them are not. There's a bit of a difference between one of the exchanges, which is, for example, Bits of Gold, representative of which is with us, and there's another one called B2C, in which you exchange this with other people. So you change that for fiat. However, given all that advice, being a company, you need to work on, I'd say, very, very carefully on your toes on that, because once you get your cryptocurrency exchanged to fiat, next thing you'll want to get that fiat to your bank in order to pay whatever employees and suppliers. And then you'll tackle a lot of questions from the bank. And questions is a relatively good situation, because if you are questioned, at least you're not blocked yet. Otherwise, you'll just be blocked. Some companies have arranged to work with the banks and to be able to get their fiat, one of which is Bits of Gold, but they've actually forced the bank to do that so far. It's a temporary order so far. In June 19th, we'll see how permanent or not this will be. But it's very much, it's very hard. So it gets me back to my first advice, is just work with an international bank, not an Israeli bank, as much as you can, in order to exchange it. For small sums, it's not such a big deal, but small sums are not relevant for companies, for startups. If you can work so far, an interim phase, with your employees, with your suppliers, by paying them with crypto, which is great for the industry, then you solve the issue. You don't need to exchange that to fiat and to tackle the banking issues. But if you need to pay them in fiat, you must have fiat money reserved on the side, I would call it, in order to pay, because you'd have a lot of issues exchanging that money, and not just exchanging is easy, but getting that exchanged money into fiat back to your bank account. Okay. Is that a full answer?
Yeah, I have very many questions from what you just said. So let's start with a situation where somebody pays me in, let's say, Bitcoin, and there is let's say I opened an account on Bits of Gold, and my customer sent me Bitcoin, right? So, and let's suppose I'm lucky and I have a supplier who agrees to be paid in Bitcoin. So, and let's say they have either an account on Bits of Gold or somewhere else, and they have a Bitcoin wallet. So I just, send them the money. How does the accounting work here, and how does the taxation work in this transaction? Double transaction.
Okay, two points on that. First of all, I'm taking you back to the world of people selling apples. Just apples. Apples are a product, okay? Bitcoin is like an apple or an egg, for that sense. When someone pays you with Bitcoin, for us it's like the person actually pays. For the tax authorities, it means for them that this person has sold you that Bitcoin, or think of it as an apple, has sold you a few kilograms of apples, and therefore he has made or she has made a profit on it or a loss. Therefore, that person who paid you with those so-called apples or diamonds in a different sense, that person had a transaction about which that person needs to report and pay taxes or bear losses. So that's first thing. This avoids many people paying with bitcoins because they do not want to report, or they do not want the profit to be acknowledged already and then to pay taxes. So that's an issue by itself.
Is that true for every country, or are there countries where Bitcoin is listed as means of payment?
For what I know, it's listed as an asset in all the countries. There are some countries in which few virtual currencies are declared. No, they're declared as currency, but Bitcoin as is no. You had a point?
The question is, this is the problem now because of the rate of the currency for the Bitcoin is going up and down it varies a lot now, and maybe in the future it's going to be like the dollar or like something not as important as it is now, or do you think it's something that will always be a problem? Or
it's a philosophical. My answer is philosophical in a way that, as it is today, the rule goes like that. Anything that you can use to pay with, say diamonds, for example, as long as no government defines this as a currency, a legal currency in which the government regulates and controls, as long as it's not controlled, and Bitcoin will never be controlled by anyone, as long as it's not controlled, it's not a currency. Being it not a currency, think of it as diamonds or apples. Depends on the valuation.
It's better to think about gold and the mining and everything where...
I don't want to put gold because it's in a term. There's a reason I'm choosing diamonds or apples, but fine. Call it whatever, call it an asset. And being an asset, the best example that I can show to mainly tax people why the government looks at paying with Bitcoin, actually a selling and a profit for you, is this. Imagine someone who is a constructor or real estate entrepreneur who's built a building with 100 apartments, and that person comes to me as a lawyer. By the way, I accept Bitcoin as my legal fees, but that constructor wants to buy legal services from me, and I sell that constructor a lot of legal services coming to be worth one apartment. If that constructor would go to the tax authorities and would tell them, I've just given Jaguar an apartment, I've just given something, I didn't sell anything, there's no way. Exactly, it's a barter. There's no way this will be accepted. And if it's not accepted for apartments, it shouldn't be accepted for Bitcoin, unless it is regulated and reformed and acknowledged as a currency, which it will never, I think. So whoever uses Bitcoin actually sells that. It is called as if that person has bought something with Bitcoin, but actually that person sold it. Like an apartment, like diamonds, same as Bitcoin. And the same way, I couldn't tell the tax authorities, hey, I didn't really get fiat money for my legal services, I just got an apartment. No, I've actually sold legal service and I need to pay my taxes for it. And back to your first question, how do you report that? Usually, I'm a firm, a company, but most people are like, what do you call a sekmushe?
Like a personal business.
Okay, whoever has a business, yeah, I bet you know what is a sekmushe in English? Just self-employed, whatever.
Freelance, it's an LLC.
Well, for me it's an LLC. Whatever. When you get money as part of your business, you need to give an invoice, or receive an invoice, and pay the company a VAT tax. Afterwards, you also need to pay an income tax and an insurance taxes, okay? Social insurance taxes. What I do, let's take for example that I've sold, I've sold you a legal service worth 100 Bitcoins. I wish, but okay. A lot of legal services, okay? And he's actually paid me 117 bitcoins. Why? Because I wanted. This is what I wanted, and this is what we agreed. I put an invoice in which I have to declare the fiat shekel value of those 117 bitcoins based on an average of 3 common exchanges or international exchanges. There are rules for that. I use an average of that day. That day is a very interesting point of time, because within a day, because it's so fluctuating, the value can change a lot. So it's a great gray game for us. My excitement is to try to find the gray lines in which you do not break the law, but you still get more. But anyway, I reported that I have to, every 2 months, if I want a company, I have to give the country the worth in fiat of 17 bitcoins out of those 117, which is hard, because if I can't exchange those 17 bitcoins, I need to have a lot of fiat money on my side, on other accounts, in order to pay that for the country.
Is that the VAT?
Sorry, VAT, yes, that's the VAT, value-added tax. And that's not all. Every 2 months, a self-employed person, if it's not a company, otherwise it's monthly, and some of the self-employed also need to report monthly when they're big enough. I need to pay them the allowances for my income tax in fiat as well. And if I don't exchange those bitcoins, I need to get that fiat from myself, plus the social insurance. So, take into account, may I continue with an example? Okay, it's a sad example, but it's actually good because we're making money.
Do you have to provide them the transaction line in the Bitcoin DLT?
I don't have to, but it's very...
According to the new laws, I think you should.
No, but it's better, because then you show and then you substantiate the value, and then you avoid questions. Yeah. When you have questions from the tax authorities, you don't go there alone. You go there with someone like me or my competitors. You go there with the tax lawyers. Thanks God, we cost a lot of money. So you better not be questioned. You just decrease the amount of questions you may get.
Provide them your public key for the transactions.
You need to give them the trace.
Transaction number.
It's a general rule. The more details you give them, the less chance you'll have questions.
No, I mean, there is the AML paper, which states that you have to give them.
Yeah. So, AML is for, I'm talking about a small self-employed person, not companies.
It's a DLT. That's the best way that they can
Exactly.
and it's time-spent.
Exactly. You've just used the right term. The best way, the more substantiated details you give them, the better off you are. What was it? I was about to give you the sad story of someone who receives fees in Bitcoin, for example. Let's take the example in 100 Bitcoins, because we're very lucky, and look at that. Imagine and all of you will need to give the company, or sorry, the government or the country, the worth in fiat of 17 Bitcoins. Basically, for every 100 Bitcoins that I receive, or everyone receives, 117, sorry, 17s go to VAT. Let's assume my tax ratio, or hopefully everyone's tax ratio will come to about 40%, because we make a lot of money. 40% needs to go for income tax, roughly saying. Plus about 15% goes to Social Security. So out of those 117 Bitcoins, what is left for us, so take 100 minus 40 minus 15, we are left with 45 Bitcoins, which would have been fine.
What about the capital gains?
Wait, we haven't sold it yet. This will come if there's a gain. But I'm still stuck with the income tax there.
We're left with 55. No.
We're left with 45. 45, right. Which would have been great, but hey, in the meantime, we need to fund, in the meanwhile, paying taxes of 17 plus 55 Bitcoins. So I need to have fiat in order to pay, exchange, or give the government the worth of 55 plus 17 is about 72 bitcoins. So actually, in order for at least me or everyone else just like me, in order to afford yourself to receive any cryptocurrency, let's say Bitcoin, you need to have a lot of fiat. A lot of fiat. So actually, in a rounded way, it makes you an investor. Because you need to put your shekels, your fiat, away and pay for that, and to be left with only 45 bitcoins. So if you believe the value of that currency is about to increase, maybe it's a great investment. If it drops by 80%, just an example, it could be very painful.
And
So,
what's let's say you're paying every 2 months those taxes, and in between those 2 months, let's take a real case. At the first of the month, it was 10,000 for fiat.
2 months
Now
later?
it's 3,700. What do you need to pay?
right?
You pay fiat.
The relevant point of time is the time of the transaction, the time that I've received the money with whatever currency it is.
If you received it at the first of the month, then you lost a lot of money.
Unless you hedge it, and you should hedge it when it's very
But
fluctuating.
how can you hedge it if you can't handle it? You can't transfer it to a bank, you can't do anything.
Either you exchange it, or you go to more complicated exchanges in which you do hedging transaction, which is very complicated for most people. So you either exchange it immediately, because this is what you have to, and get it in fiat, because this is what taxes you have to pay, or you become, in a way, a trader, which gets me to the capital gains that was asked about. So tax can bore some people, most people, but it amazingly, surprisingly, gets very fascinating to people who are starting to make a lot of money. So the more fascinated looks I see here, the better, the happier I am, because it means something for you, money-wise. So I hope I don't bore you with that. We've talked about VAT and income tax and social insurance. Now let's go to capital gains. Matt, when you sell that Bitcoin, if you sell it immediately when you received it, you received a Bitcoin, let's say, in the worth of, I'll be very generous, $10,000 a bit, for example. There were times like that. If you receive it in a value of $10,000 a bit, and you sold it immediately, you have a profit of zero. You pay a capital gain tax of 25% of zero. That's fine. But if you sold it afterwards, whenever it is afterwards, and you have a gain for that, you also need to pay a capital gain tax, which is 25%. Many people are very upset and angry about that capital gain tax. And so, hold on. And they try to avoid transactions. I'll speak up. And they try to avoid transactions just in order to avoid paying that capital gain. But my answer to that is, hey, actually a tax is a good thing because you pay taxes for profits. And people so much are trying to not pay taxes that they forget the 75% of your gain that is left with you. Hey, we get more than the country, more than the government. Government only gets a quarter of what we get. So it's great to make gains. And even if you have to pay a capital gain tax on that, it's fine. And hold on, and whoever is used or has ever been an employee, you will see on your compensation slip at the end of each month, the tax that you pay for people who earn more money is much higher than 25%. Hey, I would have paid a lot in order to qualify for just the 25% of income tax. 25% is great. It's very low for many people. So if you're lucky enough to pay only capital gain tax of 25%, of a gain, exactly, and of a gain, it's actually great. 25 is great. You had a question, sorry.
Yeah,
I just had to summarize this.
Because I have a question.
Just speak up.
The thing is that
there's no definition, like Bitcoin is an asset, is a currency, and is, I don't know, trading whatever. So you have, the government has to decide how to define it. Because when you buy $1, you don't pay tax. So if you use it as a currency, you shouldn't pay tax on it.
I think that
If I have $1 and I want to change to shekels, I don't pay tax. It's a currency, yes? All right. So I don't understand why when I buy, or when I buy, I can understand I need to pay the 70%, the VAT, but why I need to pay the tax on the exchange?
I'll tell you, Bitcoin is a diamond. It's an asset, right? It has never been a currency. It might, maybe.
No, but
That is a technology.
But
It's not an asset. It's not an asset, it's a technology. People don't understand. People don't understand Bitcoin. The reality is that people don't understand what Bitcoin is. Bitcoin is a new technology that will help not get people unbanked into the bank, but unbank people on banking.
Trading.
So, okay, in these countries, in Israel, in the United States, because you don't need it, you can relate it to the banking system. But the truth is that the Bitcoin is a social justice technology that appears in order to help people outside of the financial system. But
The legal answer, this is a great philosophical and true and technological answer, but legally, regulatorily, has never been a currency because there is a requirement by law for anything to be considered a currency. The requirement is to be a governed, regulated, and controlled exchange, or a mean of exchange, or mean of.
So why I need to pay tax when I do a barter?
A what?
A barter. When I do the barter.
Barter?
Yeah. Why I need to pay tax? I can understand the 70% VAT. I can understand why tax on it?
for any profit,
Why?
Because you pay taxes for any service that you get money for it.
Oh, it's a currency or it's an asset. It can't be both of them.
If you sell
Don't kill the messenger.
No, she's not.
I find it adorable for you guys, but
She's
still.
explaining something again. Like for example, I'm in the blockchain for a long time, for 2 years, and I have investment in a few currency tokens, okay?
Right.
And for holding that token, I'm getting currency, not a token, not an asset, whatever. It's a currency. So when I sold it, I can understand. I'm just
What do you do?
exchange it.
What do you do? What do you do for business in your life?
I'm working in Nokia. I'm not.
Okay, you're an engineer or something? Or you're an engineer, an economist, whatever?
I'm in the software, yeah.
Software, okay, right. If you sold your services as an R&D programmer or engineer or whatever to people, and you would have gotten apples for it, not shekels, not fiat, no Bitcoin, apples, many kilos of apples or diamonds, would you have had to pay taxes for that?
Pay the tax, yes.
Not just VAT, income tax, social insurance tax. You didn't get 100 shekels, you got 100 apples.
Okay.
Would you have to pay taxes
Yes,
for it?
of
Yes.
course.
Same goes for Bitcoin.
No. I heard Bitcoin is used for different purposes. For different
But
purposes.
if you sell
So
services, you need to pay tax for selling services.
I think there's a wrong definition, and I see it like that. But because Bitcoin there's a lot of buzzwords, yes, but Bitcoin is not. I don't know if it's. I'm not so.
Maximalists think like you.
Whatever you get for your services, you need to pay taxes for
Think
it.
like you.
I think
Okay,
the reason is what the tax authority is not going to
Yeah. Court with them. Okay.
Yeah, they don't know how to handle it.
Yeah.
Can you speak a bit about utility tokens?
Yeah, do you want me to get into the difference in security tokens and utility?
Yeah, we can talk a little bit about now the business of fundraising with cryptocurrency and tokens as well, which you can cover the type of fundraising, the regular, ICO or STO, but also, let's say I'm a startup company and there is an investor who wants to put Bitcoin into my company. How can I accept that? How that is taxed, how I'm writing that down, so from both ends.
Okay, moving to fundraising. In the old days, people would have get funding for their startups or any companies by selling equity, like shares, stocks in their company, or bonds, or notes in the company, and they would have gotten fiat. They were exempted from paying taxes for that because they weren't selling service or products, they were getting an investment. So an investment is like something that a person buys, like a table or a chair or an apple, and that person who paid for that would have only had to pay taxes when that person sold that share or table or equity or whatever. So there wasn't an immediate taxation for the company that raised these funds, because it would either be a loan, if it's a bond, or an investment. In a way, when it is an investment, the company, in not a direct way, actually owes back that money, kind of owes back that money. And therefore, it's not an income, it's not a revenue. When that company would have sold services or products to anyone, for that, this would be the company's business. And for that, the company would have had to pay taxes. That's a different story. So that was fine with fiat, and it was great for companies. They raised a lot of funds, paid at that point no tax. But they had to comply with a lot of regulations about raising funds, not lying, not giving promises, not leading people, investors, in false hopes for the future. A lot of regulations which are fantastic for me as a lawyer. And then came the tokens. And the tokens were another software, let's say tool, in a way, in which the companies have given tokens, which were developed by the companies, for people, and the people gave those companies fiat money, which the companies needed to pay for employees, rent, or whatever, hardware and software. And that was great, and the companies have claimed that this is kind of an equity or an investment, therefore we need not pay any taxes. But then they tackled another issue. If it is an equity, you need to comply with all the rules of equity. For example, if you offer shares or equity to the public, you need to have a prospectus. You need to qualify that with a limited number of qualified investors. And these are processes that take months, and they cost a lot of money, settling fiat money at that point. Companies did not want to comply with all those rules because they took a lot of time, and there were old economy kind of rules. And they decided that ICOs, initial coins offering, are something else, they're different. They're not equity, and therefore you don't have to comply with all the rules, all those equity rules for that. And this was a lot of fun until the governments have declared that we're sorry guys, this is actually equity, maybe a different kind of equity, a new set of equity, but an equity. And for that you need to comply with all the rules, and if you don't do that, you get in trouble with the SEC and the tax and just the Security Exchange commissions of the regulations. So they've found a new tool called tokens. And the new claim of the companies were that we're not really giving equity. It's not our fault that people afterwards trade with those tokens. We're not responsible for that. What we actually do is we raise funds for people to be able to buy in advance our services, our products, our software, our whatever invention that we have. But then, if you sell in advance a product or a service, theoretically you have to pay tax for that because you've had a sale, you've sold services or products. In accounting, we enjoy that, accountants. We call it a revenue in advance. A revenue in advance is money that you receive before you've actually supplied the product or the service. And we have special taxation rules for that, which we enjoy immensely. You don't have to be tax seekers to enjoy that as us. However, it is revenues, not equity, revenues. Revenues is something that bears taxes. And what happened in the last year is that most of the products or services that were supposed to be supplied to people who have paid for that in advance were not even close to be able to be supplied. It was just an idea. And then the authorities, rightfully so, have declared that, guys, if you don't really have a product, you don't really have a service, or there's no chance that you'll be having one, or the service, the value of that token, the part that's related to the service or the product is so minimal, it's about 2% of the value, and about 98% of the value of that token is actually the value of it, trading it afterwards and selling this for much more money. Take, for example, Bancor, which is a great example, or Telegram, or whatever. Most of the value of the tokens were just the greatness of, hey, I can sell that 2 days later and about 200% profit for that. So this was great. And the authorities have decided that there's very little value of a service or a product. And most of the value is of that token being in equity. So hey guys, it's not a utility token. It is actually a security called a security token. And then came a very famous phrase by the authorities in the States saying, there's no utility tokens, there are only security tokens, or all tokens are security tokens, even if you try to call them utility tokens. But if it's a security token, then it's, again, might be also good news for the companies, because it's not revenues. Companies do not have to pay taxes for it immediately, because it's just a security.
It looks like a duck, but
like a duck, must be a duck, exactly. It was a duck, it was equity, because people bought it not really to get the book, or to get the software, or to get whatever in advance. They bought it in order to sell it afterwards, plainly so. And being a security token, however, you need to go back again to what we've mentioned before. All the regulations, the cost, the time, and the expenses of looking at it as a security and doing an IPO or securities and prospectus, etc. in the States, and in Israel, but not as much, but in the States costs hundreds of thousands of dollars of consultants' fees. And it takes months, sometimes even 18 months or 24 months. It takes a lot of time. It is very hard for this technology that we live in nowadays, in an area that technology runs in 2 months is a very long time. It's almost history. And 4 months, a quarter, 2 quarters is prehistory in the technology world. However, the regulation worlds and the authorities, they work, and lawyers, they work on our time zones. It's a new economy, and things will have to change, but it will take time. There's always a gap. So, have I answered your question about security tokens compared to?
You think there is no utility token at all? In any case?
Utility token now is like you say,
it depends.
Trying to cheat someone.
No, I know most of the people say just to cheat, but
exactly.
But the question is, like, I believe there is a few minor cases where there is use.
As you mentioned, a few minor cases actually have intended and have succeeded of really selling a product or a service for those tokens. Yeah, but so few of them have been able to prove that this is what they've done. Some of the indications, and these are indications of showing it really is a utility, is to show that you've actually developed something. And most of the times, those companies have raised funds before they even invented anything, just for the idea, which is fantastic in an economy, but very not fantastic in order to prove that it was actually anything that existed, a utility actually existed, a product or a service.
Okay. Can I have a question about it? Now there are at least I think 2 or 3 cases that are being called for a judge in the States of these so-called utilities, which actually are just a Ponzi scheme, and that's for the companies themselves. But as we know, the way it goes, these Ponzi schemes, there is a certain group of people, who like 800 people, something like that, who bought those shares. They are not ignorant because they just sold it after a few days to other people. And actually, I think most of those ICOs were with the same 8 or 1,000 people who were dealing it with the first buyers. And the question is, those guys are going to court as well because they did the same thing, but they were not the companies.
You're talking about the investors?
The first investors, the first, let's say, Ponzi schemes.
An investor bears only the regulations and the commitments of an investor. You buy, you sell, you have a profit, you have a capital gain tax. That's it.
Okay, and the other question is regarding the comparison between STO, the STO and the IPO right now. Is it the same process as you mentioned, or is it a bit shorter with the STO?
Theoretically, it is the same process. In fact, because the regulators are striving within their boxes, limitation to try to adapt to the new world, the new, much faster technology world, they're trying to ease up the processes or to speed up the processes. It will take some generations. I mean, for us, 2 years is a generation. It will take some years for the processes, the regulatory processes, to adapt to the speeds of the technology world. But so far, by reason, by rationale, a security token is a security. Doesn't matter if you call it a token, or you program it, or you draft it as a painting on the wall. It doesn't matter how you make it. Being a security, it is a security. It has to go through all the laws and regulations of a security. It is sad that they are so slow and expensive. Very sad. But until we change the world in that way, we change the regulations and the processes.
They might change also the IPO to be faster.
Yeah, well, if we change the regulations, we'll change it for everybody. By the way, I know of a company, an Israeli startup, a great startup, led by professors and some of the founders of even Bits of Gold are there, a startup that has just raised funds, fiat money, from VCs. It happened to deal with blockchain, God forbid, but it just raised funds for VCs for equity. And the banks have stopped those funds, the fiat funds, which were sold for just plain equity, just because the company deals with blockchain for that sense. And it's just private equity, almost the oldest thing in the world, for example.
Awesome, thank you for that question. That's actually, I've seen a few companies in Israel that are issuing, in the process of issuing a security, and what they're doing on the side is they're creating a technological platform. You can do that even on Ethereum. You have ERC 1400 tokens that you can issue in parallel with the securities. So, and that's how they trade them. But I think, correct me if I'm wrong, this is like just the first initial cases that are doing that. I haven't actually seen a tradable security token here. The last use case I want to address is that of individuals who are either, let's say, miners, and they receive Bitcoin or other currency for their service, for their computational power, or let's say somebody participated in an ICO, or maybe, I don't know, in an airdrop, let's say got for free or for some sort of an action, got some currency in their wallet, and what are the actions they have to take in terms of reporting, in terms of taxation, and so on.
Would you like me to focus my answer on miners?
If it's different.
Okay. Well, the answer to that question is not necessarily related to Bitcoin or blockchain. It's just generally tax-wise speaking. Miners have to pay taxes only from a certain age, unless it is becoming a business. Airdrops are supposedly presents. Like when a miner is 13 years old, has his bar mitzvah, or at 12 years old, a bat mitzvah, and they receive presents, even in fiat, they do not pay taxes for that because it's presents. Airdrops earns presents. Okay. So for that. When they become 16, then they start reporting, or they should be. However, if a miner is even 9 years old, running on YouTube movies, or for example, on music or whatever, and they get revenues for that. They get funds for that. It is a business. It doesn't matter that if that person is a minor or not. The more, I think, interesting question is, when the minor is so minor.
I meant minors, the minor.
Oh, minors.
But that was actually very interesting. I need to talk to my kids about that.
I was actually asking, do you want me to address minors?
That's actually really cool. I need to go talk to kids in school about mining Bitcoin.
Because with the tax authorities in Israel, a tax unit is the family. They're usually father, mother, sometimes it's father, and mother, it doesn't matter, and their kids are one unit. And now what do you do if your 9 years old kid is making zillions of money or bitcoins or whatever on YouTube, and it raises everybody's tax percentages? It's amazing. But it wasn't your question, so I'll go to miners. Sorry. Mining is a business. You do that. It could be a very minor business, like a small business, if you just get fractions of coins for that. However, when it becomes significant, and significant is not a specific line that you can say what is significant, what is not. But when it becomes significant for either a child or a person, and it becomes, and one of the ways to see whether it's significant or not is to compare it to your other revenues from whatever other business that you have or you work. And when it becomes significant, you get the risk of the tax authorities declaring this or defining this as your business. Being a business, you can deduct for tax the costs of doing that. For example, you buy software, you buy services, and in appreciating other ways, you can also partially deduct the costs of the hardware that you buy, in a way, not immediately, and you have to declare the revenues that you've made, and you have to pay income tax for that. Bear in mind, most of the times when you become rich enough, income tax is the bad one, and capital gain tax is the good one, because capital gains is only 25%. Income tax, VAT, social security taxes add up to much more than 25%. So, by the way, just a general tax advice to everyone: as more as you can in life, try when you're intelligent enough to make money, try to make most of your revenues and gains in life be capital gains rather than income gains, because it's just a much better tax. And philosophically, I'm just giving a parenthesis in that, the rich people in the world pay mostly capital gains because it's much cheaper. And or nothing at all, even that. But if at all, it's much better to pay capital gain for gains rather than for hard labor. Philosophically, economically, we talk about the proletariat. The proletariat actually give labor and we give work. So we give our money, our bodies and our mind to just work, and we service the aristocrats, the rich ones. And the main difference between us, the levels in the society, is that whoever gives their labor, their body, and their mind, and we can get revenues, we pay a lot of taxes for that. So the best we can do is to become aristocrats and to have gains and to have capitals. Yeah, and to pay tax so that it's good. Capital gain tax is fantastic. Sorry, I've gone too wide on this.
It's like your public service announcement. Thank you for that. No, that's fantastic. So the last thing I want to finish up with is if you can, from your personal experience, if you can give, let's say, 5 mistakes that you've seen companies make with crypto that...
In the old days, it used to be that you got revenues in dollars, like the exporters of Israel, and you got costs and expenses in shekels. And when the dollar rate dropped, those factories could not pay their employees and rent and the factories. So same goes for currency. Hedge. Also protect your revenues compared to your expenses. It is a general rule for everything and in everything. So that's the first thing. Companies have closed because of that. Best example, today's news or yesterday's news, Bitmain. huge company, whatever criticism there might be for them or against them, they bet on a certain coin or derivative of a coin or fork of a coin that they believed in. And that coin has dropped about 90%. And their costs and expenses are not registered in that coin. So they fired about 23 people, engineers in Ra'anana, and closed their offices in Ra'anana about a few weeks ago. And yesterday or today's news was that they've actually, well, they lost about 50%, or they're firing about 50% of their workforce because the revenues are in Bitcash, right? In any other coin that has dropped. Not hedging is a mistake, first. Second, I think I've also mentioned that in the first place as well. It doesn't matter how much money you make, even if you hedge that, and you have fiated that. Fiat something is a new verb in English. Even if you fiated that, if you can't bank it, you can't pay for your expenses. So, in order to bank it, choose where the banks should be, or don't be too specific about what you do yet. Wait a few years until we can call our companies exchanges of cryptocurrencies, development of cryptocurrencies, or whatever. Because the banks and the regulators have a certain rules. When in doubt, panic out. They have a doubt, they don't know about this. When they don't know, they don't go and question this. They just panic. When they panic, they close your bank account. Not a good solution for us. So, don't be too specific. That's the second advice. And try to be bankable, even if it costs more. Now, in these years, in the coming years, even if it costs you much more, find a way that you can be bankable. That's the second advice. Third advice is I'm talking deeply from the position here, so you have to excuse my being not objective on this, but really, honestly, use lawyers. Lawyers who really, honestly, not because I'm just a lawyer, because if I weren't a lawyer, I would have been an R&D engineer for sure. But if I weren't a lawyer, I would have taken one like me, but not have to. But no, but seriously, because there's a reason for that. There's a reason. The reason is that what we see at night and in the morning when we wake up is risks. I see risks all around. And our job is to fight risks and mitigate them and to decrease them. This is what we do. We're more than a shield rather than a fighter or a sword. We're more of a shield. And we protect our customers and our clients from all the risks that we see all around. We go in the morning, we brush our teeth, we see risk. It's like a built-in thinking in our life, in our mind. That's why we become lawyers. So, if you want to decrease and mitigate your risks, get an advice, even if it costs money. What can you do? It does cost. But it will help you much more than all the cyberpunks, which are cool. They're very, very, very cool. And they did what they wanted, the way they wanted it. Some of which are in jail right now, but still they did what they wanted. But no, seriously, it is valuable. Although it is coming to dislike lawyers, but really, it's like the way I see the world, it's a bit of philosophy as well, is that the R&D engineers and programmers are the fighters, okay? We are the protectors. So you can't just fight without protecting your back when you do that. Otherwise you get in trouble.
You got more? Or 3 is good?
Report for your taxes. Because I don't think it's fair.
Come after it.
Exactly. But I don't think it's fair, but my belief doesn't count because nobody in the government asks me. But, so sadly so, the authorities, wisely for them, have declared tax offenses as criminal. So, if you don't report, not even mentioning not paying, you are a criminal. And you might be able to go to jail. Not fun at all. So when I get clients for a consultation meeting or whatever consultation, and they debate about which service to take that I can offer them, or maybe they could take it from other people, that's fine. I tell them, you don't have to listen to me. But if you don't please memorize my mobile number by heart, because I would like to be the second telephone number after you call your mom from jail, but then it will cost you much more. I'm cynical and I'm kidding, but seriously, take tax as a serious, scary business. That's my best advice.
I love that.
I have to tell you something. My friend invested not so much money in Bitcoin in 2017. And a month ago, he got a letter from
like
the
authorities.
And the thing is that he went there, and they don't know what to do with him.
Yeah.
He said he was sitting there, and they didn't know what to do with him. So it's ridiculous to send a letter telling you that you owe money, but the system are not supporting you.
Actually, the letter doesn't say that you owe. The letter requires you to report.
Yes.
It's your responsibility to report, not them.
Yes.
Not theirs.
All you have to
He
do.
went there.
Oh, you have to. They're not equipped to deal with this, but who is equipped to deal with this? Your accountant.
Exactly.
So, but if you're a person.
By the way, it depends which Kitchuma, but they're learning. Some of them know more, some of them. So don't assume they don't know it.
Yeah, if they're a company, if they're using an accountant, they can go to their accountant and ask them what to do. I went to my accountant and they use a specific software that they're putting, crypto in. But if they're a person, who just received crypto or traded or whatever, then they can go to, like you said, Pekit Shuma, right? Like the local Tel Aviv.
They hire an accountant.
They have to hire an accountant and pay them.
Better.
Yeah, they better.
And the taxes are only if you cash out.
No. No, this is a barter.
So when it ends.
Even before you go back to fiat, when you trade Bitcoin to Ether, right, to USDT, to Ripple. I love Ripple, by the way. I claim that it's called after my name, because I advise Ripple in English. Not seriously. But when you trade crypto to crypto, it's actually like you've exchanged diamonds for potatoes.
Just only.
Sorry?
If it goes up, you have to.
Well, you don't hold anymore if you've exchanged it. For example, you've experienced a fork. If you just hold it, you haven't sold it. But selling is not going back to fiat. Selling is even changing this with anything else. Always bear in mind that exchanging or even forking, and it's kind of like a forced exchange. It's like, for example, you've had a diamond, and the world has decided that they cut the diamond into two and make it a red and a blue one instead of a white altogether. And they forced you. You didn't decide to. The world has forced you technologically to split your diamond into a blue and a red one. For the tax authorities, by mistake or not by mistakes, I'm not responsible for them, you've actually sold a white diamond and you've gotten two diamonds, a red and a blue. So if there's a gain, you need to pay taxes for that. Sadly, but it is.
Yeah.
On that optimistic note, there are two things I want to say. The first thing is that I would love to really thank you all for coming. Thank you for being a part of this industry and helping us understand it more. Through questions, we all learn and understand the issues and the challenges, and now we can go and fight it like Jaguar does every day here. So yeah, and we learned from Yael about the general world of compliance and banking, and we learned from Adva about the practical ways to deal with crypto. One last thing I want to answer, and I know you had a question, so if you want to maybe afterwards come and ask Adva personally. I want to talk to you guys about this party that's happening on the 3rd of January. If you want to come up and say a few words. Do you guys